Suicide bombers take hundreds hostage in a Moscow theater. They rig the building with explosives.
If the explosives went off, the whole building would collapse.
The terrorists are prepared to die for their cause.
I had no idea how we were going to get out of there alive.
To end the siege, Russian authorities turn to a secret weapon never used before. This is the inside story of how a desperate rescue mission went disastrously wrong. Russia, Moscow. October 23rd, 2002. Russia's first Broadway-style musical, Northeast, plays to a packed house of about 900 people at the Dubrovka Theatre in Moscow. In the audience are American electrician Sandy Booker and his Russian fiancée, Svetlana Gubareva. Sandy and Svetlana are celebrating. The US Embassy has just granted Svetlana and her 13-year-old daughter, Sasha, permission to move to the US and start a new life with Sandy.
We were in a great mood. We felt everything will be all right from now on. We will finally all be together.
8 kilometers across town, another group prepare for the evening. They are Chechen rebels at war with Russia. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, 15 states broke free from Moscow's grip. The small, mostly Muslim state of Chechnya also demanded independence. But vital oil and gas pipelines from the Caspian Sea run through Chechnya. The Russians refuse to give up the valuable resources. Over the next 11 years, the small state fights 2 devastating wars with Russia. 200,000 Chechens are killed and nearly 500,000 left homeless. The territory lies in ruins. Only a heavy military presence keeps Chechnya under Russian control. Chechen freedom fighters will do whatever is necessary to win their independence. They'll even sacrifice their own lives to get the Russians out of their territory. Their leader is 25-year-old Movsar Barayev, a notorious rebel wanted by the Russians. He was raised by a Chechen warlord and has been at war with the Russians all his adult life. He is an Islamic fundamentalist who wants Chechnya to become an Islamic republic. In this rare home video, he is seen training in the wooded hills of Chechnya, supported by Arab gunmen. The Russian government believes these men are linked to Al-Qaeda. Now, Barayev and about 50 heavily armed freedom fighters are about to take the battle to the very heart of Russia, Moscow. – 9 p.m. In the Dubrovka Theatre, a video camera rolls as the second half of the show begins. Marina Krylova, the house manager, is returning to her office.
I heard the big bang. Starting to see what was going on.
In the foyer, Marina comes face to face with a group of armed men. They force the theater employees into the auditorium. Some stay behind to attach explosives to supporting pillars. Marina has a chance to escape, but she follows her staff into the auditorium.
I was afraid they wouldn't appreciate the seriousness of the situation. I had to explain to them how to take care of themselves, to sit tight and be quiet.
This is the moment Barayev and his group make their move. Pediatrician Tamara Starkova is enjoying the musical with her husband Sasha and their 16-year-old daughter Lisa. They think this is all part of the show.
We saw men in camouflage and heard machine gun fire and thought that it was part of the play, a very modern artistic trick.
Also in the audience are Sidika and Peter Lowe from England. They're visiting their son Richard, who's studying Russian. Sidika soon realizes this is not acting.
You don't get actors firing machine guns up into the air and bits of plaster falling down.
More terrorists enter the auditorium. One of them has a camcorder. 18 of the terrorists are women.
We were all getting very, very nervous. They carried guns and had bombs strapped around their waist.
The bomb belts hold 2 kilograms of explosives. Each woman carries a detonator. The women are here to avenge loved ones killed in the war. They have nothing left to live for. Barayev and his team need to control about 900 people. They tolerate no resistance. Marina tries to prevent any violence. Barayev speaks to the stunned crowd.
Вы наши заложники сейчас. Мы требуем.
He tells them he and his group are Chechens. They are taking the audience hostage.
Вместе с вами.
If the Russian army doesn't withdraw from Chechnya, Barayev will blow up the theater and everyone inside it.
Умрете.
He tells the crowd to deliver his message to the world.
Скажите, что мы здесь, в Москве, в самом центре.
Barayev adds one more instruction.
He was saying we should ring up our families and say our goodbyes because we would never see them again.
Аллаху Акбар.
The hostages notify the authorities. An hour later, police and army surround the building. News crews film their operations. British journalist Mark Franchetti is with them. He has close contacts with the Russian authorities, so is able to witness their response to events as they unfold.
Police had set up a cordon around the theatre. The whole perimeter around had been completely emptied. There were no people. There were Russian special forces with snipers already on the roofs.
Not long after the siege begins, President Putin speaks to the nation. He refuses to even consider an independent Chechnya. The Chechens and their captives listen to Putin's words on a portable radio. He tells the world Russia will not negotiate with the terrorists.
He said, we won't give in to terrorists, and we will bring those people to justice. We looked at each other realizing we are doomed.
Barayev tries to show he is willing to negotiate. As a goodwill gesture, he releases 15 children under the age of 12. Russian troops in Chechnya treat children over 12 as grown-ups, capable of using weapons. Millions of viewers watch the children leave the theater. Svetlana Gubareva tries to get her daughter released. But she is 13.
I tried many times to persuade them to let Sasha go. Every time I failed, it was very hard. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore, and I broke down.
100 meters from the theater, the authorities set up a command center. General Vladimir Pronichev is in charge. He is the deputy director of the Federal Security Service, responsible for anti-terrorist operations.
Pronichev was under a lot of pressure to try and end it quickly and to try and save as many people as possible.
But the general is in an impossible situation. He cannot stall for time or negotiate with the Chechens. And if he storms the theater, they'll destroy the building.
If one of the explosives went off, the whole auditorium certainly would collapse, and that most people would die.
Pronichev must find another way. There must be a weak spot in the terrorist strategy. The general orders special forces to install fiber optic cameras and microphones on the theater. They provide vital information about the terrorists' behavior and the weapons they have. Pronichev's men study every detail, looking for an opportunity to strike. In the theater, Barayev makes 2 hostages carry in a 50-kilogram bomb from the foyer. The Chechens film as it is placed in the middle of the auditorium.
It was very, very scary. The woman sitting with the bomb saw how nervous I was. She told me I shouldn't worry. If it went off, there'd be nothing left. The bomb was powerful enough to destroy 5 buildings like this one.
The terrorists place yet more bombs on the stage. The hostages are surrounded by explosives on all sides. Tamara tries to comfort her 16-year-old daughter.
I told my daughter, if the bombs go off, we would die straight away. We will go straight to heaven and see Grandma and Grandpa.
Friends and relatives of the hostages gather outside. They beg the authorities not to storm the theater. They know an assault is likely to end in disaster. In 1995, Chechen rebels seized a Russian hospital. When special forces stormed the building, more than 100 hostages were killed. Now, 3 hours into the siege, Pronichev gets the Chechens on the phone. He tells Barayev the Kremlin is unlikely to agree to his demands. He presses him to release hostages, but the general offers nothing in return. The government will not allow him to make any concessions to the terrorists.
The Russians didn't know how to negotiate with the Chechens. It seemed clear that this was not a bluff and that they basically had come to Moscow to die.
6 hours into the siege, hundreds of troops surround the building. They keep watch for the slightest movement in the theater. Suddenly, TV cameras pick out a lone figure walking towards the entrance. It's a woman. No one knows who she is or what she is doing. Chechen guards bring the woman to Barayev. Svetlana watches, horrified.
She kept saying, "Who do you think you are? You're nothing but dressed up clowns." And she kept saying to the people, "What are you doing sitting here, listening to them?" She was provoking them. Then someone said to him, "Why are you chatting to her? Just kill her."
The Chechens wonder how she crossed the police line. They think she must be a spy.
It was very frightening. There was dead silence in the auditorium. But I felt proud of her. Even if she is an agent, this is still a heroic act, because it was obvious she'd be killed.
Microphones in the theater pick up the gunshots. But Pronichev cannot see if anyone has been shot. He has no idea who that woman was. But she has made the fragile deadlock worse. If the Chechens have killed a hostage, Pronichev will be forced to attack. It could lead to a massacre. "6 a.m. It's been nearly 12 hours. Barayev is paranoid. He believes an attack could be imminent. He shoots at any strange noise he hears. Day 2, 14 hours into the siege. The Kremlin still refuses to engage with the terrorists. Although they've released 15 children, General Pronichev cannot offer them anything in return. He's worried the terrorists will lose patience and start killing hostages. Journalist Mark Franchetti has access to the decision-makers in the command center.
The Russians hoped that it could be settled peacefully, but I don't think they were particularly optimistic about it. I think that from the word go, they started training and preparing to storm the building.
Pronichev keeps searching for something that will give him the element of surprise, to end the siege without bloodshed. The standoff deepens. Inside the theater, the hostages are given sweets and drinks from the confectionery stands. But conditions are deteriorating. The rebels refuse to allow the captives out of their sight, even to use the toilet. The orchestra pit is used as a makeshift latrine. The smell is nauseating. Barayev allows the Red Cross to enter the theater to tend to the sick. They remove the dead woman's body. She is identified as a 26-year-old local shop assistant named Olga Romanova. Barayev learns she was not a spy. She slipped through the police cordon in the dark. She had been drinking. Inside the auditorium, things settle down. Hostages try to sleep. Suddenly, the terrorists drag Sidika's husband, Peter, from his seat. Sidika and their son, Richard, hold their breath.
I was very, very scared. I remember saying to Richard, "Oh my God, let's hope we don't hear any gunshots."
After an agonizing wait, Sidika hears from the Red Cross that her husband is safe. Peter has a heart condition. His daughter told the Red Cross, who notified the Chechens. The terrorists know the Russians will storm the theater if any hostages die, so they let Peter go. 39 other hostages, mostly Muslims and those with medical conditions, are released during the day. Many are interviewed by the authorities. Pronichev needs to know how many terrorists there are and what weapons they have. They make a simple but key confirmation. Barayev is in absolute command. Nobody will detonate a bomb without his order. This information is the chink in Barayev's armor General Pronichev needs. He now sees a way forward. To free the hostages without blowing up the building, he must get Barayev out of the auditorium. Pronichev tries the easy route first. He offers Barayev safe passage to a third country in exchange for the hostages. While the general waits for a response, something unexpected happens. A figure appears on the surveillance monitors. He is a colonel in the Russian Secret Service, acting on his own. For the second time, someone has broken into the theater. This time, a Chechen guard acts immediately. Will Barayev think the Russians are attacking and blow up the building? Barayev doesn't react to the colonel's break-in. Instead, he's angry that the Russians would think he'd even consider running away. He tells Pronichev on the phone.
But I've made it absolutely clear that they had absolutely no intention of accepting the offer of safe passage.
Barayev wants the Russians to negotiate. He must convince Pronichev that he will blow up the theater if they don't talk to him. Journalist Mark Franchetti makes a timely phone call.
I explained to him that it was important to give an interview because he would be able to put his message across.
Franchetti has written extensively on the Chechen conflict. Barayev grants him an interview on condition it is shown on television. He goes in at midnight. This is the actual footage of the interview.
Цель у нас одна – остановить войну в Чечне и вывести войска. Наша группа называется бригада Рияду Салахина. В эту группу входят все.
He said that we're not terrorists, because if we were terrorists, we would accept a plane and $1 million and leave.
Я хочу сказать наши враги, клянусь Аллахом, мы стремимся умереть на пути Аллаха больше, чем они хотят жить. Аллаху Акбар. Аллаху.
It just seemed incredible that being allowed to sort of come in, talk to the Chechens. It was very odd just to think that beyond that war were 850 people living in a state of terrible, terrible fear.
Идите сюда.
Barayev refuses Franchetti access to the hostages, but allows him to see some of the Chechen women.
Всегда на кнопку. Раз. На кнопку. Все это.
He makes sure Franchetti sees their bomb belts and detonators.
Дальше.
Day 3, 30 hours into the siege. Franchetti's interview with Barayev leaves General Pronichev in no doubt that the Chechens will kill everyone in the theater if the Kremlin doesn't make an offer.
The situation was incredibly difficult. In fact, the Chechens were becoming increasingly frustrated.
General Pronichev is under increasing pressure from the Kremlin to end the siege. He will have to storm the building. But even if he can get Barayev out of the auditorium, should one bomb go off, it will be a bloodbath. Then, an advisor suggests a radical solution. An anesthetic gas to put everyone in the theater to sleep. It has never been tried. It could be deadly. But the general is out of time and out of options. The gas is a powerful opiate based on a readily available anesthetic. It was developed by the KGB during the Cold War. Its original purpose and composition are classified. The general plans to inject the gas into the theater's ventilation system to put everyone in the auditorium to sleep. Then, he can storm the building. But there's a problem. If the terrorists see they are being gassed, they could detonate the bombs. Pronichev recalls what the released hostages said. The terrorists will not detonate any bombs without Barayev's order. Pronichev must get Barayev out of the auditorium before injecting the gas. The plan has other risks. A person's age, weight, and health are critical factors in determining the safe dosage of an anesthetic. The gas pumped into the auditorium will spread unevenly. Exhausted hostages will inhale disproportionate amounts. No one knows how it will affect them. The military have an antidote for the drug. Its composition and how it works are also classified. The general orders large amounts of the antidote to be made ready. Day 3. 36 hours into the crisis. Barayev has hardly slept for 3 days. He's exhausted and highly stressed. Acute stress can produce headaches, anxiety, and depression. It affects the brain's ability to concentrate and judge situations. Barayev begins to suffer violent mood swings.
His mood depended on what was going on with negotiations. When things weren't going well, he'd start saying, "If they want dead bodies here, we'll start shooting hostages." And when things were going the way he wanted, he'd be promising us a happy ending. Those mood changes were endless.
Constant fear and lack of sleep is making the hostages weak and helpless.
Men seemed to go lethargic, to the point of not even moving. Most seemed to go into some kind of stupor.
That afternoon, pediatrician Tamara Starkova is trying to rest with her husband Sasha and daughter Lisa. Suddenly, they hear on the radio that the government will talk to the terrorists. Barayev is exultant. The Russians have finally recognized the need to negotiate. But the government has no intention of negotiating.
It was a ruse. It was a crafty plot on behalf of the Russians because it's led the Chechens into a false sense of sort of victory and security.
Pronichev's plan is to get Barayev to lower his guard and relax. He might then leave the auditorium to get some rest. Then, the general can deploy the gas. That evening, the government has still not confirmed a time for the talks. Barayev grows increasingly impatient. House manager Marina Krylova is pessimistic.
Feelings went from hope to hopelessness. The situation had become a deadlock. There either had to be an attack, which meant unavoidable death, and if not attack, what?
General Pronichev's microphones relay Barayev's impatient gunshots to the command center. The Chechen leader is dangerously on edge. Hours later, after saying they will talk to the terrorists, the government has still not said a word. A sinister mood takes hold in the auditorium.
They started playing these Muslim prayers. There was definitely this tense atmosphere. It seemed as if, you know, they were waiting for something to happen.
Tamara is scared.
It felt like the end was near. My feeling was that we will die. It was clear that they were preparing for something terrible.
A chilling news report confirms their worst fears. If the Russian government doesn't send someone to negotiate, Barayev will start executing hostages at midnight. The Chechen leader is tired of waiting. He has released over 60 hostages already. The Russians have given him nothing in return.
Russian hostages were told by the Chechens that they will soon start executing them. 3, 5, 10 people at a time.
The stress is too much for one hostage. Denis Gribkov is sitting behind Tamara. He makes a beeline for the big bomb.
We had to stop him. If the bomb went off, we would die straight away.
The bullets miss their target. Tamara is shot in the stomach. The man behind her is hit in the head. Gribkov is hauled up in front of Barayev. He explains that he wanted to disarm the bomb to save everyone. Gribkov is removed from the auditorium. Tamara is badly wounded. She needs help urgently. The man behind her is unconscious. The house manager, Marina Krylova, is a former nurse. She urges the rebels to call for a doctor.
30 minutes passed, 40 minutes. No doctors. I asked again, where are the doctors? They said, yes, we called.
The man dies. Tamara is losing blood. General Pronichev's fiber optic cameras capture the shooting in the auditorium. It's what he feared. After 3 days of hardly any sleep, people are beginning to crack. If an opportunity to strike doesn't present itself soon, there will be more killings. He must offer Barayev something to keep him calm. Over an hour after the shooting, the Red Cross arrived to take Tamara and the dead man from the theater. Tamara says goodbye to her husband. She begs Barayev to allow her 16-year-old daughter to go with her. He says he will let her go.
I was holding her hand when they put me on a stretcher. I wanted to tell them, for the sake of Christ, let my daughter go, as you promised. But they might get angry at that, and I said, for the sake of Allah. Then she disappeared. They didn't let her go.
One hour before the executions are set to begin, Barayev gets a call from Pronichev. President Putin is sending someone to negotiate. He will arrive in the morning. Barayev is triumphant. This is his moment of victory. Svetlana is thrilled. She and her daughter, Sasha, will now be able to move to America with her fiancé, Sandy Booker.
We shared a few moments of joy, then decided to sleep so the time would pass more quickly. Last time I looked at my watch, it was about 3:30 a.m. Sandy and Sasha were sleeping, with Sasha resting her head on his shoulder. They were holding hands.
For the first time since the siege began, the hostages go to sleep, feeling optimistic. In the morning, their government will set them free. But the government is not sending anyone. Now Pronichev can only hope that Barayev will leave the auditorium and give him an opportunity to strike. Day 4, 56 hours into the siege. Just before dawn, the rebels drag the show's producer, Georgy Vasilyev, out of the auditorium. They take him up to the theater's technical control room. Barayev orders him to switch on the theater's video. He wants to watch the moment he and his men storm the stage. The change in the Chechens' mood is registered in the command center and reported to journalist Mark Franchetti.
They lowered their guard. They felt fairly secure. They thought that until the next morning, nothing would happen.
In the command center, the general is glued to the monitors. Finally, the moment he's been hoping for. Barayev has left the auditorium. Now is the time to strike. Within minutes, special forces attach a container of the powerful anesthetic to the theater's ventilation system.
Using the gas was actually very sophisticated, but was to save as many people as possible.
A fine mist descends on the auditorium.
Газ, несокрощенный газ, везде, кошмар. О, Господи, мы все умрем! Газ! Газ! Что же делать? Смотрите, газ! Газ! Какой-то газ!
Hostages think it is tear gas.
One of the ladies behind me, she said to me, "Oh, she said, it's tear gas. You want to cover your face."
Two terrified hostages phone a local radio station.
Газ, да! Мы прячемся! Помогите, пожалуйста, помогите нам! Помогите!
Вы его чувствуете? Ребята, ну я умоляю, я не знаю, мы видим, мы чувствуем, мы дышим в тряпке, что-то делают наши.
The rebels think they are under attack and start firing into the parking lot. Russian special forces don't shoot back. They wait for the gas to take effect. Sidika fears the Chechen women will now blow them all up.
All the suicide bombers stood up with their guns in the air and their fingers on the detonator. And that's the last thing I remember.
The anesthetic works fast. As soon as it is breathed into the lungs, it enters the bloodstream. The blood carries the drug to the brain, where it affects the central nervous system. The victim slips into unconsciousness. Outside, special forces continue to wait. If even one terrorist is awake when they go in, they could all be blown up. 20 minutes go by. Suddenly, a figure appears from the foyer. It's a hostage. If she's awake, how many of the terrorists are too? General Pronichev decides to wait a further 40 minutes before going in. 6:30 a.m. The gas has been pumped into the theater for an hour. Now, the general finally gives the order to launch a full-scale assault. Special forces storm the building. But Barayev and 4 of his men are in a room above the auditorium. The soldiers enter the building from all sides. They blast their way into the foyer. Many Chechens are still awake and fight back, but their resistance soon crumbles. Soldiers take no chances with the Chechen women. A semi-conscious suicide bomber can detonate her bomb belt. One team battles their way upstairs. Barayev is waiting for them, awake and heavily armed. The terrorists are no match for the highly trained special forces. Barayev's mission comes to a bloody end. "20 minutes after the assault began, special forces have taken control of the building. There are no Russian casualties. Over 40 Chechens lie dead. Among them their leader, Movzar Barayev. Soldiers race to evacuate unconscious hostages from the auditorium. A bomb could still explode.
They did not know, obviously, what other bombs, other explosives were hidden in the building, and they very much feared that as they were in the building, there would be another explosion and people would die.
The military hand over the comatose hostages to civilian authorities. But the general has kept his plans for ending the siege secret. So doctors, hospitals, and ambulance services are completely unprepared for the scale of the disaster. Svetlana Gubareva and her daughter Sasha are both unconscious. They are taken to different hospitals.
Сашу привезли.
Sasha was taken on a bus with dozens of bodies loaded on top of her.
Сверху телами.
Doctors did try to save her, but couldn't.
Svetlana's family identify the body. They don't tell her the truth about her daughter's death.
Но поскольку сам факт того, что ребенка раздавили, страшен.
They didn't tell me that she was crushed to death
Они от меня это скрывают.
until I read about it in the paper.
До тех пор, пока я их не приперла,
Because the fact of a child dying like that
прочитав в газете, тогда мне рассказали.
is horrible.
Svetlana's American fiancé, Sandy, dies at the theater from the effects of the gas. She has lost everyone. Hundreds of bodies are pulled out of the theater. Some hostages are already dead, overdosed on the drug. Others are comatose. The antidote is not working. Unconscious hostages are dumped on the ground, many on their backs. In this position, the tongue can fall against the back of the throat, blocking the airway. Many die, choking on their own tongues.
There were not sufficient doctors there to check if they were breathing or if they were suffocating. Most people who died just died as a result of suffocation.
Tamara Starkova undergoes surgery to save her life from the gunshot. As soon as she regains consciousness, she asks after her family.
Они сказали, ищут. Больница все.
They told me gas was used. There was no explosion. Everyone's in hospitals. We're looking for them.
Но я чувствовала, что
They were afraid to tell me.
всячески пыталась узнать как-то там.
I opened my eyes and my sister was standing before me. I said, Sasha died. And she says, yes. Lisa? She said, Lisa too.
Over 600 hostages are taken to hospital to be treated. 150 fight for their lives in intensive care. Doctors struggle to save them. They need to know what's in the gas. But the Russian authorities refuse to tell them. 129 hostages die directly after the siege. And yet, there is no public outcry.
Public opinion works in a bit of a different way in Russia. It is, in a sense, easier to deal with a hostage operation like that and end up with a high number of casualties than it is in another country, where more questions would be asked and resignations demanded.
The siege of the Dubrovka theatre and its tragic aftermath does more than kill over 100 innocent people. It kills the Chechens' prospects for independence. Their struggle continues, but with little public support. Many survivors who lost loved ones now feel a deep hatred for the Chechens.
Если бы я осталась одна, я ловлю себя на мысли, я, наверное, какой-то вот...
I catch myself thinking that if I was alone and didn't have my son, I might do something similar.
Семью.
Go to some Chechen family and blow myself up.
President Putin's tough stand on terrorism temporarily boosts his popularity.
Удалось сделать почти невозможное. Спасти жизни сотен людей. Мы не смогли спасти всех. Простите нас.
Sidika Lowe and her son Richard are separated in the confusion outside the theatre.
My first memory of coming to was having my feet absolutely freezing on slush. It could be that's what actually woke me because I was shoeless. I remember sort of saying to them, what's happened? Where's my son? I want to know what's happened to my son.
Richard awakes from the anesthetic in hospital. Sidika is reunited with him and her husband later that day. In the years following the siege, the death toll from the after effects of the gas more than doubles. Many survivors still feel the debilitating effect of the drug. Its composition remains a secret to this day.